Do you feel like the BBC can be saved?
No, I don't. You have to own up to your bias, to your opinions. You have to realise that the political things that you believe in are opinions. They're not. It's not a question of fact or error. It's an opinion. It's your view, and they have never done that. That is the one thing they have never done.
Hello and welcome to Spectator TV. I'm John Connolly, the Spectator's news editor. This weekend, the BBC was plunged into crisis after its Director General and Head of News resigned. Joining me to discuss is the Spectator's Associate Editor and former editor of the Today programme, Rod Liddle. Rod, thank you for joining us on Spectator TV. As I mentioned there was the big shock departure of the BBC's Director General and its Head of News at the weekend, in particular over BBC Panorama's editing of a Trump speech. First of all, to start us off, did you think they had to go?
I think it's in a way a shame that Tim Davie went, because I think he knew what some of the problems were with the BBC, but he just didn't have the wherewithal to deal with them. I don't think anyone has got the wherewithal to deal with them, if I'm absolutely honest. And if you listen to the Today programme this morning, you will have heard an organisation entirely in denial of both the charges against it, not by me or the Spectator or the Murdoch press or right wingers, but by their own editorial advisor. You know, and they are completely in denial. They are there saying, much as Deborah Turnus, the calamitous boss of BBC News, was saying that there is no institutional bias in the BBC. This was repeated on the Today programme by Mark Damazer, a charming man, utterly deluded, and by David Yelland, the former editor of The Sun, who, if you're reaching for David Yelland, you know you're in a spot, frankly. Don't have you?
Tim Davie, he will be re-employed quite quickly, and his future is very bright. It's the BBC that I'm concerned about. And by the way, he's going to be in today. He's not going for a period of months. And I'll tell you this: by the time he leaves this building, we will know what happened, and his reputation will be very high.
Yeah, and it was remarkable as well. Even before the resignations, you had all these sort of BBC outriders and defenders, people like Nick Robinson, John Simpson, basically saying, "Oh, there's no real big problem. It's just a kind of right-wing attack." I mean, do you think it kind of makes the problems worse for the BBC in a way that they can't kind of acknowledge where there are actual problems?
No, it is the problem. That is the problem with the BBC. The so enclosed are they in that bubble, and so buttressed as well by a tranche of the population which will say the BBC right or wrong, that nothing ever gets done. And the criticisms from Michael Prescott were very specific. They were very detailed. And individually, the BBC kind of puts its hands up and says, yeah, you're right. And yet it cannot see that this is an institutional problem, a systemic structural problem with the BBC, with the way it hires its staff, with the staff members itself, and most of all, with the way in which the executives cover their own backs and believe that they are in the right and that this is either commercial or ideological warfare being committed against them by outsiders. It is the very a picture of an organisation which is at the end of its tether, frankly.
And Rod, obviously, you've worked for a long time at the BBC. You've appeared on lots of BBC shows. In your view, kind of stepping back a bit, like how does this sort of issue with impartiality manifest itself at the BBC?
It manifests itself by the output, but also by I remember back in 2002. The reform, I can't remember what it was called. Was it called UKIP? I think it was pre-UKIP even. Were complaining about the coverage given to anti-EU sentiment, and there was a detailed study about it done by this particular party. It's the Bill Cashes of the world, those people, And I mentioned this to the director of editorial policy at the time, who said, what you have to understand, Rod, is that these people are mad. And that is the view. And that was the view all the way through. And it's been the view ever since. And it was the view through Brexit. They actually handled pre-Brexit reasonably well. But afterwards, out came the bile, the distortions and everything. They are incapable of treating the asylum issue even-handedly. And then when you get to race, gender, and Israel, it goes off the scale. They're not representing a left-wing point of view. They're representing a far left-wing point of view. You know, the government, we have a Labour government, and that has been in support of, you know, Lisa Nandy has been saying that the BBC's got to improve its editorial standards. It's not a simple liberal left point of view. It's far left. It's remarkable.
Do you think, Rod, that people inside the BBC realise they're not being impartial? Or do you think they sort of have this view that, well, we're right?
No, they think they're being civilised. They think it's a civilised way to be. And then suddenly they come up against reality when, for example, the Supreme Court decides that the biological sex is a determinant between men and women. They suddenly, oh, God, what's happened here? And they're still opposed to it. There's still an LGBTQ unit with it. Well, why has it got an LGBTQ unit? Why has the BBC got an LGBTQ unit? NBC doesn't have one. The Times, The Sun, Talk Radio, Times Radio, this vast journalistic enterprise, they don't have an LGBTQ unit or correspondent. ITV doesn't have an LGBTQ unit. You know, why have they got one? And it's because they bought into intersectional politics and see everything through the prism of gender and race. And which is why when you turn on a BBC Radio 4 drama, it will invariably be about someone who's queer or someone who's black. And it's just become a parody of itself, and its obsession, of course, with drag queens.
Numerous articles every month on drag queens on the BBC Online it's quite something. It does seem as well, I think, on the gender issue, that in particular seems to have lost the BBC a lot of friends that it might have had who would be traditional supporters of the BBC. Do you think that's a real failing there?
Yes, I mean the trans issue is just embarrassing for them, and so is the censure handed down to Maxine Croxall, the presenter who had the temerity to roll her eyes when she had to say the words "pregnant people." You know that they are so far from what the average person in Britain believes or understands that you wonder, how can the licence fee sustain?
And you do think, so Tim Davie's gone now, there'll have to obviously be a replacement. Do you think there is anyone you'd have confidence in to kind of fix this mess?
Yeah, Lee Anderson.
Yes. That would definitely be a kick up the bum.
Yeah, Lee Anderson. Well, I've said before, I think Trevor Phillips would be a great choice. I saw a shortlist, and it depressed me enormously. There were 4 women, all of whom working, all of whom have been enveloped in the same culture as the executives they are supposed to put on a better path. Absolutely no use at all. Whereas if you've got someone like Trevor Phillips, who I think is a first-rate broadcaster, knows journalism inside out, was the boss of the Equality and Human Rights Commission. What's wrong with that? I think that's a really, really sensible suggestion. I mean, if there is some hope for the BBC, they've got Samir Shah as chairman. He's a good bloke. But I don't know. I just don't know how you change, how you bring enlightenment to them. It's just beyond me. You see, it's back. I can't remember when it was, but there was Richard Tate, the guy from ITN, did an independent study into the BBC back in the 2000s, early 2000s. And he said one of the points in his report was you have to own up to your bias, to your opinions. You have to realize that the political things that you believe in are opinions. They're not. It's not a question of fact or error. It's an opinion. It's your view, and they have never done that. That is the one thing they have never done.
And it does seem to be a big blind spot, is that often impartiality is about what you choose to focus on as well as how you focus on certain issues. And it's quite a tough one to fix that, isn't it, I suppose?
You would never, ever, I mean, ITN's guilty of it as well to a degree, but you would never, for example, for a long while, see a drama program in which a black person or a gay person was the villain. I mean, which to my mind is racist. It's patronizing and racist. You very rarely saw a news story on the protests outside abortion clinics, which actually heard the views of those who were protesting outside abortion clinics. You know, it was all about what a crime this is against women. And immigration has been the same, and certainly on transgender issues, exactly the same.
It seems, if anything, the BBC has sort of gone the other way when it's trying to fix its impartiality issues in the past. So, for example, setting up BBC Verify. I suppose the idea is to focus on misinformation and keep the BBC being trusted, that way instead of kind of focusing on balance. Do you think that's been a mistake?
Well, I think Verify is laughable in its philosophically, because the BBC has 20,000 employees, and the idea that these 60 people are the people in possession of the whole truth. What are the other 20,000 doing? It's an absurdity. And basically all they do is they look up the same reports that their correspondents look up and give the same view, as it was perfectly demonstrated by a former government minister, Conservative government minister, Peter Lilly, who said basically, when he was in this debate with a guy from Verify, basically, you're just arguing with me on a matter of opinion. This isn't about fact, and that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Rod, people like Nigel Farage have said, for example, that we need to kind of pare back the BBC and then have that kind of obsessive focus on impartiality. Do you think that's part of the problem as well, that it is so big and unwieldy, like that sort of Tim Davie had no chance of kind of controlling or having any oversight over that, and kind of the BBC needs to be reduced in size as well, or do you not think that's needed?
I don't know. I think something needs to be done with the structure of the BBC. I think it obviously brings the license fee into grave doubt. Not simply because of the bias and the mistakes that are made, but because in this modern world, it seems an anachronism. And, if there were an independent BBC channel, which cost me as a subscriber £180 a year to buy, I'd probably buy it. I don't think that they'd lose as much as they think they would by having the compulsory element removed. I think it might be better for them and for us. The other thing, which is that they still cleave to this notion that you hang your opinions up on the door peg, I think was Tony Hall's rather fatuous statement about opinions when you bring them into the BBC. The truth is you can't do that. And the truth is that pretending that Nick Robinson and all the presenters are unbiased is just ludicrous. I mean, they are sentient human beings who have political opinions. My view has always been that they should be allowed to state those opinions.
Okay.
And that if they did state those opinions, then you'd very quickly see just how left-wing the BBC was.
And hopefully then there'd be sort of internal pressure to hire people with different views, you'd think.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point, because I think all the sort of ex-BBC employees who now have podcasts, I don't think anyone was particularly surprised when they started saying, oh, we're allowed to express our opinions now. And yes, those opinions all seem to be the same.
Yeah, they are. No, exactly.
So I guess, Rod, to finish off, do you kind of feel positive? Do you feel like the BBC can be saved, I suppose, is a better question?
No, I don't. No, I think I think what's happened over the last 15 to 20 years, and yes, there have been attacks on it which are motivated by ideology and motivated by commerce. But then there's also a big commercial question for the BBC to answer, and the damage it's done to other news institutions which don't get a public subsidy. Undoubtedly, that's all been there, and they have been under attack. But they're under attack for very, very good reason, and I just don't think that this model really works anymore.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rod.
Cheers.